Hello everybody, so welcome back to the next segment for the topic progressive progression. My name is Ching, and in this next segment, we will be covering gradual exposure. Now, equipped with the why you are training and the mindset for it, we move on to the practical aspect. The first is concept of blending continuum, developed by Ryan Ford from Apex Movement. It is basically to start out with testing your jumps and gradually setting out the premise to gradually gain progression in order for you to attain your goals. A similar concept is covered in psychology as well, known as exposure. A voluntary exposure to the unknown, whatever it is that makes people uncomfortable. It is a prime curative process in psychotherapy to find out what it is that you're afraid of and that is interfering with your process forward, breaking it down into smaller pieces and exposing yourself to it. As such, the beginning would have been maybe touching the spot that you're gonna take off and land, standing at your takeoff spot to become more accustomed to the space. At the beginning, you might probably are nervous about it. You stand there until you feel bored, and then you begin to make that next small step forward, such as doing a small innate jump at your takeoff. Gradually gauge what you can handle, as these things take time. You don't have to do anything unless you want to. If you are a spotter, a coach, or a supportive friend, be patient and assure them that there is no trick, no sudden push, no games on them. Neither should you jeer them in order to spur their ego to commit before they are ready. Recognize that to them it is more than just an obstacle that you see. The challenge is from their purview, borders on impending doom. The perception at this point falls into more than one category of definition or association. The challenge presented has elements of it being that might overlap with and other matters which frightens them, or a reminder of their past trauma, such as past injury, a broken bone, a pulled muscle that took months or years to heal, hence resides that phantom pain. That reminder of one's own mortality, a matter that as kids we gradually become exposed to and understand. Moving forward, I'm going to cover trying to progress forward, basically your progressive progression techniques. I will illustrate with a precision jump because whereas it is a fundamental technique in training, it is extremely useful and it extends even as you scale in skills, especially when it comes to working towards sticking your landing. Moreover, it shows a rather extensive examples of steps that can be taken and eventually skipped in the process if there is a realization that you have the capabilities for it. Here we go.
So I started off with counting the steps to know the gap, how wide the gap is based on my prior training, how much I can handle. And then I did a test jump at the side of the structure to better get acquainted with the space. So over here I'm testing the height because I don't want to hit my head, right? So I did my first initial test jump just to land as close to the structure as I can, to break the initial fear and for the feel of a jump. After which I make a next jump where I land first my feet on the ground and then next feet against the wall in order to lead me to the next one, whereby I've tried to force my feet against the wall first before the other feet touches the ground. Here once again I repeat the same process, but the feet that was touching the ground is now gradually getting closer towards the wall. In this next attempt, I try to make 2 feet touch the wall as my hand come down to safely bring my body back down, that I don't stumble and fall backwards. Here I repeat the same procedure, only that I try to let the both feet that was touching the wall touch higher up against the wall, closer to where I want to land. In this next attempt, I make it a point to have my feet touch the landing area while the other feet is still pressing against the wall. Notice that my hand came down so that I don't fall backwards from my initial landing spot. In this attempt, it's a repeat of the same, only that I make it a point to really stick onto my landing area without falling back. In this attempt, it looks like almost the same as the previous one, only that the leg that was the lower against the wall is now forced up to step higher. I did a test step in order to acquaint my body to understand that it just need to tug a little bit harder for me to land both feet onto the structure. With all of the gradual progression into place, I committed to the jump to stick the landing. As with in life, there is usually more than one method to reach a particular goal. So in this case, I'm testing out another method where I use a running head start in order to try to get a test of the feel of the jump. This case is similar to the progression that I did on the floor, only that I scaled it up and tried to let my feet land onto the wall to get a sense of how it feels like. I repeat a similar process, only that I progressed by letting the feet that was touching the ground this time around step against the wall. In both instances, notice that my hands came down so that I don't fall backwards. In this attempt, I make it a point to stick my landing, where I force my body forward so that I don't fall off from the structure but stick onto the structure with a crane. Here I push onwards to my next progression for me to stick the landing with a running startup. Having attained the feeling for the landing, in my next attempt, I decide to gradually work on cutting down the amount of running startup I need by one step, whereas still sticking to the landing that I have achieved prior. Here I take yet another decisive step forward, so I minimize the amount of run-up that I needed. So as you can see, while I have landed, I stick to the same amount of energy that I've produced. As such, it wasn't enough in order for me to stick the landing. So I knew that I have to churn in much more amount of strength and tuck my legs a little bit tighter in order for me to stick the landing. With that success, I now bring my feet once again closer towards the spot that I want to finally take off from, but still am not ready for it yet. Building from that last success, I now feel a bit more confident for me to try taking off from the final spot that I wanted to take off from, and I give it an attempt. Alas, this time round I didn't give enough power, and so I fell backwards. Studying from the previous success and also understanding from the previous failure, I now prep myself once again and give it my all, sticking the jump. So in this next example is when you have the opportunity to shift the structures that you are training with. As such, I shift it to a distance where I'm more comfortable to break the initial jump, to remember how the feeling of sticking a landing feels like. After which I begin to proceed shifting the structure backwards. How far backwards is dependent on the initial jump that you made and how comfortable you have felt from the jump. Once you begin to feel more comfortable, you proceed to gradually shift the structure backwards once again. By now, the position of the structure is when I started initially, before bringing them forward. In this attempt, you notice that I didn't give sufficient energy. As such, as I begin to fall backwards, I make sure that I land to my feet and two hands grab onto the structure so that I don't fall backwards, and have an idea of how much more effort I needed to put in. So here in this case, while I have given more effort, it was still not sufficient, and I began to struggle trying to roll my feet up. Unfortunately, I fell off. Which brings me to this next attempt where I stick the landing using the information from my previous few jump.
Whereas the concept is generally the same as with every other challenges, of course, different techniques will require a different approach, and the difference in training space will need to be taken account for their various variables.
In this attempt, I'm trying to do a Kong to precision. So I start off with testing out by counting the steps once again to get a sense and a feel of the space and how much effort I need to put in. And then I proceeded to do my initial move where I did a Kong to the side, so I have an idea how much effort to give, or if I'm even making the mark in general. And then I proceeded to do a Kong and step against the structure, or in the attempt to get more acquainted to the spot and to the landing platform that I'm gonna try. You might have noticed what differs from the previous attempt was that the leg that was touching the floor is now gradually closer towards the structure. And with the next attempt, I seek to stick 2 feet onto the structure, and you notice that my hand came down so that I can push off or to grab on if I fall backwards. So here I push once again and try to gradually step even higher this time round, landing one step onto my landing platform. These attempts gradually build up my confidence and get me more acquainted with the space and more comfortable with taking a bigger run up for me to channel more strength and momentum to land into my crane. In my next attempt, I begin to seek to land to my crane once again, but the lower legs to step up higher. In most instances, you will get it on the next try immediately. Sometimes it takes you a couple more tries for you to get a better understanding of the amount of effort, output that you need to churn in order for you to achieve your goals. Many a times if you have missed the jump, you know that it was sketchy and you could have done better. In these instances, you will have to rely on innate experience, which is gained over time. Here by now, you will have noticed I'm visibly tired. As such, I took a deep breath before I poised myself and committed myself into the move, making the challenge and more satisfied with the outcome. So in this next example, I'm showcasing cat to cat, or gradually I'll progress into cat position. As you can see, the movements is pretty much the same in terms of the progression techniques into getting myself acquainted with the space and gradually lift my legs higher and lift myself up higher to the point where I can gradually hit my goals. Here you can see that I also take time out to clean my shoes, to wipe my hands, to make sure that my conditions are as prime as I can get. And if needed to be, because I'm tired, I'll take some time to take a deep breath, breathe, and repoise myself before my attempt yet again.
Now about concerns about failing or falling, please refer to the various videos about Yukimi, how to fall, for a better understanding on that aspect. If, however, having followed all the steps, or even skip a few of the steps as shown, yet you find yourself unable to break through into landing or sticking the challenge that you have set for yourself, please refer to our breaking jump video, which will elaborate further on this matter. I hope the provided video has been enriching and helpful, and until the next class, stay well.